Today I'm going to talk about the big data import external module. And what that module does is it allows you, as it says, to import a lot of data at once. I'm not going to import a huge amount of data today because it is time intensive. I tried importing over 100,000 records yesterday and it took a while. So I'm just going to do small batches, but to show you the functionality of this module. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my external modules and enable it. And as always, if you need a module enabled, just let us know. Email us at redcap@email.arizona.edu with the project name and number and the modules that you would like us to enable. So this module is fairly simple, but it has a lot of little nuances. So the documentation is pretty robust, and I'll just hold that open now, but we'll go talk about that later. Because it's really easy. There's only one thing you have to configure, and that's optional. And the configuration is it allows you to set up email addresses for when the import is done. It'll send you an email saying that the import is done. So I'll put and then I'll put Terry in here. And then you can also set a reply email. So that would be the sender email rather. That's the email that it's going to say that it's from. So I'll just say REDCap. And once again, this is not mandatory, so you don't have to put any email addresses in. There is a GUI that allows you to see when the import is done and has a logging feature, so you don't have to have it send you an email. But this would be good for you if you have, like I tried yesterday, putting in a huge amount of data and I have to leave or I have to go work on something else, and it'll email me and tell me when it's done. So now that this module is enabled, similar to the Shazam module, it lives here in the external modules area of the menu. And so we have a couple of options for our big data import. So let me just show you what I built for this project, and I'm going to use the code book to show you that. So it's just a quick small set of fields from Tissue Metrics, which is a biorepository web application that I manage. It's all de-identified data, so we don't have to worry about that. But one of the important things is this field here, and this is why I'm showing you in the code book, because you have to format your data the way you would for a REDCap import. So a regular REDCap import, you would have to add the record number and then whether it's complete or not. And if you're not sure what values to have for the complete field, then that's where this code book comes in handy. So if you want them to be, I believe it's gray or yellow if they're incomplete. I think they're yellow if they're unverified, and then they're green if they're complete. So if all your data is clean and you want to just mark it as complete, you would put this field in as a 2. So there's just 12 fields, and let me show you an example of the data that we're going to import here. Make that bigger for you to see. So here's that field here, and it's Big Data Import Demo, which is the name of the instrument, and underscore complete, and I have a value of 2. And then all the way here on the left is my record ID. So these are the 2 columns that you have to make sure you have, along with the field name, the fields that you're going to be putting in your instrument. So now let's go back to the import. And even though I opened that in Excel, that was a CSV file, so the delimiter by default is a comma. So if you have a CSV file that has the data is broken up by tabs or semicolons, pipes or carets, you would select how you're separating your data. But I'm going to just do a comma. Now, if this is your first import, this isn't as important, but if you are importing records over and over or down the road, you would want to make sure that you're checking for existing records. And if not, you can just uncheck that. But that's checked by default. And if you are importing the first time, it doesn't really matter. It only has a difference in how many. It only makes a difference in how many files you can upload at a time. So we'll leave this checked for now. And then this allows you to overwrite existing values with blanks. So if you have a record that already exists, but you're updating a value in a field, this is what you would want to check to make sure that you're wiping out that value. So it would overwrite the value. You could leave that unchecked too. And then if you want to check how you want your date fields to display. So these are the only options that you really have to select, and a lot of them you don't even have to do anything with, depending on how your data is. So now we're going to choose a file. And so I've already imported some of these, so I'm going to start with this one. Now you can import multiple files at once. You just can't select multiple files at once from here. And I'll show you that in the next import. So then we're going to submit this. This just puts the file into sort of a holding area for you to upload. And it checks it to make sure everything's fine. And now we just start the process here. So now it's doing its thing, but nothing's happening on this page. But if we refresh this page, you'll see here now that it's showing that it's putting in my records. So this is batch import number 7, and it's putting in 250 records. You can see that this is ticking up every time I refresh this. And then you can also verify that your records are being imported if you go to the logging, because it's going to show you. So let me scroll all the way down here to the beginning of the import. You'll see here that when I started this, it's saying that there's a file submitted via this module, and it's import number 7, and now it's showing you that each record is being created. So you'll have a log of each record as it's created to make sure that it's been inserted. And this is really valuable because sometimes, as I was testing this yesterday, there would be times where this would show me here that my records were imported, and down here it would show me that the records were imported, but when I went to the log, they weren't imported, so my numbers were off. And that's the thing I'm going to email the developer about, because I ran into a couple of problems yesterday when I was trying to import, and I don't know, and I use the exact same data, so it wasn't a problem with the CSV, so I don't know what was causing that. I actually had to create this project a couple of times. So if we refresh this, we'll see that we're close. So all 250 have been imported. It takes a little bit to catch up with everything, and then it'll send me an email and let me know that it's all been imported. So you can see here that now I started with 4,000 records, and now I have 4,250. And while we're waiting for the email, I'll show you the record status dashboard. So right here it says that I have 4,250 records. So if we go to the last ones here, and you can see here that they're all green because I had set that complete value to 2 for them to be complete up here. So just let's look at one of these. And actually Terry's going to be getting an email too, so he might be able to tell me when it pops up. So this is just data that I've pulled from Tissuemetrics. For this is a biorepository sample, so this would be when the samples were collected, what type of sample it was, and what's sample number, and where it's housed, what freezer, that kind of information. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how to import multiple batches. So this, I just got
Manuel, real quick. I've got the email.
Okay, yeah. All right, mine just popped up too. So if everybody can see that, all it does is tell you that it's done, and for more information to go to this page, which it takes you to a link back to this page here, and it shows you that 250 records were imported, and it shows you that the process is finished down here, and that the batch of 250 of 250 is shown. So you could have, you could delete these logs every time you do it, just to make sure that you're not having to sift through all of the data. But it is nice to see here that I have 4,500 samples, and then they're all just kind of stacked up on top of each other, so I can see which files I've put in and when. So let me go back to, I got too many tabs open now. So let me go back to the big data import here, and then I'm going to show you how to do multiple files. So the tissue metrics file that I have, it's got 280,000 samples, and so if you want, you can break that up into multiple CSV files, so that way you're not having one entire file where it's going to sort of succeed or fail. You could break it up by 1,000 records a piece, and it'll sit there and batch them, and as each batch goes through and it's successful, it'll just move on to the next one. So you're not having to just wait for it to slog through all of those. The only thing you have to do if you want to do multiple files is you have to uncheck this existing records, check for existing records. So if I have this and I choose a file, and then I go to choose a file again, it tells me, it should tell me that it's, yes. So it tells me that it's already, a file's already been uploaded, and I can't do it without, during an active upload. So I should be able to just uncheck it and do the next one. So you can see here that now it's, this files are, it goes from pending to checked as it starts the process. So now I'm going to add another one, just these three. Nope. Oh, I guess I have to check that again. See, and that's the thing, is it defaults to that, so you have to just make sure you uncheck that. All right, so now I have 3 files. Each one of them has 250 records in them. It's going to process this one first, and then move to this one, and then to this one. So let's start the process here. And if we refresh, we'll see down here that it's importing number 8, batch 9 of 250. So while that's running, I'm going to go back over here to the documentation, because there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. So these are the errors that you could get. So if you're getting existing records, you're going to get an error, and let me make this bigger so everybody can see it. So if there's existing records, you're going to get an error, because it won't, as soon as it hits a record that exists, it's going to pop out and tell you that it's there. And you're going to get this error message in the log for the import. And then the other thing is, if you have an issue with the file, it's going to tell you. So if there's a blank record, if there's a field that's missing, you're going to get another error. And there's also warnings. So if you have calculated fields, anytime there's an error, it's going to show, or a warning, it's going to show you what it is, and it's going to give you an option to show the details. So if there's an issue, you'll be able to see what the problem is. And then another thing you can do is cancel the current import. So you can't delete the import, but you can cancel it as it's going. So what it does is, because it's creating records as it's going, you'll pretty much just stop it where it's at. So then you can start over again. You would have to go back and clean out the records if there are any records that you want to take back out. So as it's importing, it's not batching it and then importing it all at once. It's importing as it's going. So when you cancel it, you have records that are already imported. And then if you import it or cancel it, it'll show you that it's been canceled, and then tells you that 195 records have already been imported. Yep, so it looks like ours is done. I just got an email. So you can see here that it's that 8's done, and now it's working on number 9 here. And if we go back, you'll see here that 8's finished and 9's finished. And if we go to the log here, and you can refresh the log as well. It'll show you which record has been created. So we've got about, I think, 100 left. Yeah, because I set it to go to 5,000. And after this is done, I'll show you what happens when you have a duplicate. So if you do have another file that has a duplicate record, and then I'm also going to show you what happens when you have an error. I ran into this problem. That's how I knew that I had to have the complete column, because it was complaining when I had the record ID column, but I didn't put the complete column, and that's when it was complaining that it wasn't there. So I'll show you what happens if you have a column that's extra, or that's something that's not formatted correctly. So let's go back to here. So this is just the import information. It shows you whether it's succeeded or not. And then when we go back to the import, we can hover over the totals, and it'll show you which records have been imported. It would be nice if these were hyperlinks, because then you'd be able to click on and go to the record. But it just shows you which record IDs have been imported. Let's see where we're at. So it looks like we're finished. Import number 10 is finished, and I'll probably get an email soon. So let's go back to the log here. There you go. So now we're at record 5,000. And let me just close this one here. And we'll go back to the import page. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to leave this checked, because I want it to check for existing records. And now I'm going to choose the file that I have here that specifically, I already know those records are in there. So let's run this real quick. And there's only 20 records, so this will be pretty quick. And you can see here that it immediately showed up that there are existing records, and it shows you what the values are, the records are. So if I only had 15 records in there, and these 15 were duplicates, and these weren't, I could tell it to continue the import. So it'll flag me when it hits a duplicate, and then I could just say, go ahead and continue. So that's the error that you're going to get, and you'll also get an email too. So, but it doesn't say. You can see here that this one says that the import process is finished, but this one here just says the checking has finished with existing records. So that one's different. It's telling you that it checked them, but it didn't import anything. So now if we go back to here, let me refresh this. Or let me close that. So now the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to add one that has an extra field in it. It's this, I just added a sample volume field, which is in the CSV file, but it's not in the database, so it should flag it and say that there's an error. So if we submit that and then run the process, you can see here that I only had one record, and that the status is that there was an error. So if we go down here, it says that this was not completely or successfully imported, and this is just a record ID. That's not how many records there were. But if I show the details here, it says that the following fields are not found in the project as real data fields, and I had added this sample volume. So that's the error you're going to get. So if you do get an error, you'll be able to open up this details panel and see what the error is, and then you can fix it and then re-import it. And I think that's it for the big data import. Let me just look. Oh, actually, and then in the log, it'll tell you when it's been canceled. So if somebody does cancel something, it'll tell you that. I don't think it tells you if there's an error And then finally, you're able to delete the logs. So if if this starts to become too cumbersome to sift through, I mean, right now there's almost 2,000 entries just for this small batch. So if you're putting in hundreds of thousands of records, this thing could get pretty overwhelming. The other thing too is I found this out as I was building this because I had a project that I was importing data into and it was working just fine, and then all of a sudden it would import data and it would tell me that this data was imported, but when I checked my records, there was no data. So I went into the project and I deleted all the data and tried it again. And when you delete the data in the project, all of this logging goes away. This will all be, this will all go back to the way it was when we first imported. So you wouldn't see any of this information here. And I think I deleted that project that had an error. So let me bring that up real quick because it might be good for you guys to see. So this is exactly the same project that I had before, and if we go to import the data, I'll just import one of the small ones here, and if I refresh, so you can see here that it's importing. It's got batch 250 of 250, and if I go to the logging, you'll see here, so I deleted the project, I just undeleted it, and you can see here that it started the file. It says that it's submitted for import, but there's no records of it being imported. And if I go back to the import log, it's showing that it was successful. And it's showing that there's 250 records. It's showing the IDs that those records had. But when I go to the record status dashboard, there's no records. So that's something I want to email the developer about and probably use this as an example, because I don't know exactly what's the problem, because as you guys saw, I imported this CSV file just fine from the previous example. And if we look at the code book, it's exactly the same. So there's nothing inherently different between the two projects. And actually, I had to do this. The project that I demoed earlier is like the fourth project, because they started fine. The data was importing correctly, and then I cleaned it out, so I had a clean copy to show you guys today. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I tried it on another project that I put data in and then erased the data and put the data back in again, and it worked fine. So I'm not sure exactly what the problem is. So, but if I find out and figure out what the problem is or hear something back from the developer, then I'll let you guys know. So that's it for the big data import. Does anybody have any questions?
I guess we'll go ahead and close down unless there's any questions. Thanks all for attending again. It's really nice to see you all here. And we'll keep trying to show you something new for your project. So thanks again, and I'll go ahead and end the session.